In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Daily Memphian's Tigers podcast. I'm Parth Upadhyaya, the Tigers basketball beat writer here at the Daily Memphian, and I'm joined by John Martin, the DM's Tigers college sports columnist. As always, we've got a lot of Tigers basketball news to get to and another chaotic week for the program. But first, don't forget to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you may get your podcasts. You can also listen to these episodes and read all of our Tigers sports coverage here at dailymemphian.com. Now let's jump right in. John, another eventful week for Tigers basketball. Obviously, this all started on Sunday when reports surfaced that Tyreek Smith would be leaving the Tigers program in search of other opportunities because of frustration with his playing time and role. Obviously, then you know how it goes from there. The program comes out and says, he only told Penny he wanted a day for himself. Monday comes around. Tyreek is not to be found, right? He's MIA. He's not at practice. He's not at the Laurie Walton Center. And then his agent, Boog Knight of Young Money Sports, goes on a Twitter rant, essentially. A bunch of tweets, some videos, kind of trying to shed light on Tyreek's side of the story, saying that it was never about ducking smoke, never about role or playing time, but that there were promises that were not upheld, according to Boog Knight. And those promises, he alluded, had to do with NIL commitments that Boog Knight claimed were not received to Tyreek Smith. Obviously, we get more clarity as the hours go on, and by Tuesday, by yesterday morning, we're recording this on a Wednesday afternoon, so by yesterday morning, the situation's patched up. Tyreek is back at practice. The team tweets out a picture of the guys, surrounding him and celebrating his return. And it seems like all's well that ends well, but man, another kind of goofy, right? For lack of better words, headline surrounding this basketball program. Optically not great, but certainly good that Penny put this fire out as soon as it was ignited, it seems like. What are your thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I wrote about it at the Daily Memphian. Actually, and I appreciate you texting me on what was it, Wednesday morning, how much you appreciated the column.
I still gotta read it.
Well, I want you to read it again. Right? Really let it sink in.
We'll read it again.
But no, listen, people will definitely accuse me of, being a hater or whatever the case may be. But I actually am somebody that's never afraid to give credit where it's due. This was an insane situation, to be totally clear. I mean, this is a role player. This is like a guy, maybe he starts, maybe he doesn't.
A high-quality role player.
Sure,
right?
High quality.
Yeah.
I mean, high quality, but I mean, just a lot of BS, 2 weeks before the season starts. And I thought Penny did a really good job, maybe more so than he has in years past, of identifying the problem, identifying the situation, stamping it out. We don't know exactly, because you're going to hear a million different accounts from different people,
100%.
right? As you know, I'm sure you've talked to the collective people. They say we've done everything on our end. Tyreek Smith's people don't believe that to be the case. And then we have not heard anything officially from Penny Hardaway. Guess really not much from Penny to say. He was not at practice. Now he is at practice. So not really much for him to say at that point.
He is speaking, and I know this will come out
Sure.
whenever it does, but
Right.
Thursday morning at 8:30,
Right.
Penny Hardaway will meet with media members. So we'll hear from him then, hopefully.
Yeah, I think
on the
we
Tyreek Smith
will.
situation.
But, again, will we really know the full details? I doubt
Doubtful,
it.
right.
But that's not what's important to me. I don't care. I don't care if he feels like he was wrong. They don't care. Again, everybody is going to feel the way they feel. There's, it's like in marriage, there's your truth and there's her truth. Or there's, that's the truth. That's
a hell of an analogy. Yeah,
everybody has their own version of events. But I think what's most important is that it was rectified in a very quick manner and it was not allowed to linger. Great Cranberry song, Linger. You familiar?
I'm not familiar with cranberry, unfortunately.
The cranberries.
The cranberries.
This is
multiple. I got you.
I need to talk to Eric. About this podcast.
After this.
Yeah, right after this. But yes, I really appreciate how Penny handled it and got to the bottom of it and rectified it. Now Tyreek Smith is back at practice, so that's a good development for the Tigers.
No doubt. And I think you've talked about this on your radio show and others have as well, that this kind of stuff happens everywhere across the college basketball landscape, especially at places like Memphis, big-time programs where basketball means so much and so much is invested, right, into this roster and these players. But the thing is, man, while the sausage may be made everywhere, not every program's giving you a front row seat in the kitchen.
Yeah, so
and it seems like every time they're saying, "Hey, come into our kitchen. This is how it's done." Like media's seeing it, the fans are seeing it. Like, everything plays out kind of publicly here.
That's right.
More so than other places, right?
Well, you bring up a good point. I think one of the real shortcomings for Penny at Memphis, too much talking. He's got too many people around his program that talk.
Too many people at practice, quite frankly.
Too many people.
What I understand.
Because this is one of the things that John Calipari, who was for me the standard at Memphis.
Yep. Best
coach ever. Frank was walking around here today talking about how great John Calipari was a football beat writer. He never let that stuff get out of the building. That stuff happened. I mean,
it happens everywhere.
I'll give you a million stories. Right? About this player, that player, this player, that things that, dude, Cal's practices were open to everybody.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
I'm not talking about you, me, Frank, now. I'm talking about anybody could go. A fan
like
could go
Joe
to practice.
Schmo from
Yes.
the street can walk into Calipari
and
practice.
Stuff still never got out because he had a great handle on his staff, on Cal had that culture, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Penny does not have that. Penny has too much whispering going on around his program. And that's how like this situation should have never gotten out. It should have, the mentor should have never got on social media. Like that should have gotten handled before that point. That'd be my only criticism. And I think that's what, there are so many situations, Parth, and you know this because you've been here for a little bit, but there are so many situations that have come up over the years that could have been less of a problem and less of an issue
if they hadn't been in the
had they just
headlines.
stayed in-house.
Exactly.
And again, sometimes Penny himself takes it out of house, i.e. South Florida loss.
After South Florida, yep.
They lose one game and the entire house is on fire.
But the house had been on fire. If you watch the UTSA game
I understand
or the Tulsa game,
I understand.
there was
but
a fire
again,
that had started
there is value
many weeks
to
prior
your
to that.
team to keep it in the locker room.
Keep the dirty laundry.
Because once
in
it
the
gets
closet.
public, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. So
no, you can't.
I do think that's one of the things that Penny could definitely do better about. But I do think again it shows some growth that he addressed it and handled it as quickly as he did. He didn't let this simmer. He didn't let this sort of hang around and hover around the program. He attacked it head on, and again, it's up and up. It feels like.
Yeah, I think it was less than 48 hours right after the initial report comes out Sunday evening.
Exactly.
By Tuesday morning, Tyreek is back at practice. All smiles, all's well that ends well.
All's good,
and we're moving forward.
I actually said that in my column, but I appreciate you saying that.
Oh,
all's well that ends well.
That's where I got that
Shakespeare,
you
familiar with him?
I am.
All right, we got him. We know Shakespeare. Not
we
the
know
Cranberries, but we know Shakespeare.
No idea who the Cranberries are.
Okay,
Still.
well you will. You will. It is your loss.
What kind of band is that?
What
kind of music?
What do you mean? What kind of band is that? I mean, it's just a great band.
All right.
You have Zombie.
Is there a genre?
Linger, Dream. It's like a
Frank Bonner's saying he doesn't know who it is either, or who they are. I'm sorry.
Must be young.
Frank's not going to listen to Cranberries. I'm just going to say that. I mean, it's not a Frank band. It's a Natalie band.
But it
Does that make sense?
It could be a Parth band.
I mean, I'm not trying to discriminate about music tastes. I just don't think I'd see you doing the drop top listening to Cranberries. It would shock me.
I don't see Parth doing that either.
Well, he's going to after this. He's going to. It's his homework assignment.
I'm going to hop in the car and pull up the Cranberries on Apple Music.
Linger would be my recommendation.
Linger. Let's start there.
Yeah, great one.
Speaking of Linger, obviously Penny Hardaway did not let the situation linger, and now we are pressing forward onto the second and final preseason charity exhibition that the Tigers will play, and that will be Monday against number 2 ranked Alabama in Huntsville at the bronze center. I
We
believe
got
how
it.
you pronounce it. Yeah, it's Ron Bronze something, man. Let's call it the Bronze Center.
Don't look at me, man. I
At
don't
the
know.
Bronze. Yeah, I'm
I
looking
don't
at
know that,
exactly. I was looking at you for some confirmation.
I can't help you there.
They're playing in Huntsville.
Gotcha.
That's all we got to know.
That's exactly right.
Man, we learned a little bit about the team against North Carolina. Obviously, North Carolina was missing R.J. Davis.
Yep.
It wasn't at full strength. And the Tigers were missing Musa Cisse. We'll find out for sure Thursday morning, but it sounds like Memphis will be back at full strength. They'll have Musa Cisse, Tyreek Smith. Obviously, we discussed that. He's back.
Love that.
And everybody else should be good to go unless we hear otherwise. So we're going to see a full-strength Memphis team against a very, very, very high-octane Crimson Tide offense. They're going to shoot 1 billion threes. I think they shot 60-something against Wake Forest.
They're like the Celtics, man.
They just – it's funny.
They're just shooting 63s a game.
Yeah, they launch them from anywhere.
You know the Celtics won the NBA championship last year,
I do
right?
know that. I do know that.
So, but you have the Crimson Tide 4th in your AP poll.
They don't guard nobody.
Oh, okay. All right.
They didn't guard nobody last year. They put up 100 on multiple teams and didn't play any defense.
All right. So they're not. Are they going to win the SEC?
I think there's a good chance. They're the preseason favorite for a reason.
You think the SEC is the 4th best league in America?
I do not.
Do you think
do.
it's? Well, I mean, where is it? Where does it rank?
That's a good question. I think it's the second.
Because we know you're going to have the ACC first, right?
Man, it's not 09 no more,
The
unfortunately.
Big East had 3 bids last year before anybody goes crazy about the Big East. They had one more bid than the American.
Okay, fine. I was going to say the
You guys
SEC
are
is
the
the
Big
second
East?
best basketball conference
Yeah.
in the country, right?
Yeah. So
after
but
the
you
Big
have, so you
12.
have the SEC champ 4th in your AP top 25.
I do.
Got
I
it.
do.
But I don't want to get. I don't. This we can argue about Alabama.
Look at the
different
teams in front of them, though. I got Houston. I got to go back and look at my ballot, but I've got Kansas number 1. Kansas is the
Houston.
most loaded roster in the sport.
Yep.
Number 1.
Yep.
By default. Big 12 favorite.
Yep.
Then I think I've got Houston 2nd.
Yep.
And Duke 3rd, right?
Yeah, I think you're higher on Duke than I am.
Than a lot of folks are, but
yeah, that's fine. I get it.
I've also got Cooper Flag as my,
I
in
respect
my
that.
preseason.
No, I'm not. I don't hate
first
it that
team
much.
All-America
I mean,
ballot.
if Cooper Flag and Con Canoop kind of come together and do what we think they can do.
Dude, once we saw that footage of Cooper going against Team USA
No, I get
this
it.
summer in Vegas and was holding his own as a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Dude, the sky's the limit.
I agree. He's a monster. Yeah.
Either way, we're going to see one of the best teams in America
Yeah.
go up against the Memphis Tigers. Sounds like Grant Nelson, Dakota Durant, as they call him, will not play, according to John Rothstein. That's the last I'd seen, last report I'd seen. So I guess we'll see if he plays or not. But aside from him, looks like the Crimson Tide will have a lot of their players back who were missing against Wake Forest also.
Yep.
And they beat Wake Forest by 21, right? While missing Grant Nelson and others. So what do you expect to see from Memphis in this matchup? And what do you, what's the barometer? What do you need to see from the Tigers to have confidence going into November 4th season opener against Missouri?
Well, it's a good question. I don't really know what I expect to see. I mean, are you going to tell me that Penny's going to show something? Like he's going to intentionally take this one? He didn't take the first one seriously, so is he going to take this one seriously?
I think he'll have to. It's so close to the season starting,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
so
It's a
I
week
mean,
out.
I think Memphis really needs to be competitive. I mean, at the very minimum, especially without Nelson. If Nelson doesn't play,
Right.
because you've now seen your two exhibitions have been missing their either first or second best player. If that goes the way so you really you have to be competitive in this game. I'd like to see a better offensive effort for sure. I don't know that there can be one. I mean, I think they're kind of limited in what they can do offensively. I really need to see more from Dane Danger for sure.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him have a bounce back game if you're a Tigers fan.
I'm
Certainly.
excited about the debut of Musa Cisse, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. The old boomerang transfer. Love me some Musa for sure. So I think it. I'm not saying they have to win or anything like that, but it needs to be a competitive game. They need to show that they have more offensively than just PJ and Tyrese, because I can already see the BS. I can already see it. I'm like a hurricane hunter.
Sure.
I see it forming in the ocean.
Okay.
And that is.
And what's the BS? Tell me.
The BS is it's just going to be PJ and Tyrese all year. And they're just going to be taking turns, and there's nobody else on this team that's going to be able to be counted on or get the ball enough in terms of volume for this to all be hunky-dory, happy-go-lucky Memphis basketball.
John, do you remember 2 years ago, there were 2 players that took turns?
That is
that
true.
Team was pretty good.
Now, that was
Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams.
But the difference is that everybody knew that, right? Everybody knew and accepted that.
So your question is, do the other Tigers, the supporting cast, so to speak,
yes,
do they know that?
Because last year's team did not. Last year's team, because you can bring up 2 years ago, you didn't bring up last year. Last year it was two obvious options, right, with David Jones and
Javon Quinn.
Yeah. But everybody wasn't cool with that.
No,
everybody wasn't down with that.
No.
And so, that's how it can look. And I have PTSD a little bit, but I'm a little worried that if we don't have more of a I say we, I mean Memphis. If Memphis doesn't have more of a free flowing, get other guys involved, if it's just PJ and Tyrese taking turns.
How long does that harmony last, right? In the locker room, is that what you're saying?
Well said.
Yeah.
And it won't. I think there's a real chance that if a third – now, I do think Kobe will shoot the ball better, right?
Yeah.
But
if he went 2 for 11 in that first – or 1 for 11. I forgot what it was. But
yeah, I mean –
it's got to be an anomaly.
I was actually
40%.
watching this with somebody whose opinion I really greatly respect. And even though Kobe was missing the shots, the person said that dude can shoot the hell out of the ball. Like they were, even as he was missing, right? It was still, the opinion from that person was he's going to be a great shooter for this Memphis team. So,
and he's been a great shooter throughout his 5-year college career, right?
So
we've got a large sample size
I need a better offense. I need a more, I'm not going to say equal opportunity offense, but involve somebody other than Tyrese and PJ, because we don't need to have this be take turns.
A two-man show.
Exactly right. Because we got that last year and it ended up being a disaster. So I need to see more from somebody not named Tyrese Hunter or PJ Haggerty. That would be my main goal to get out of this.
I will say, unlike last year, just based on what I know about the personalities on this team, the names on this team, if you get 1 or 2 other guys outside of PJ Haggerty and Tyrese Hunter involved, I think everything will be hunky-dory, right?
Sure.
If you get just a Dane Danger and a Colby Rogers.
Yes.
If those 4 can have large pieces of the pie and everybody else can eat where they get it, right? Get it where you can.
Yes.
I think everything's cool.
Yeah, well, I know that, Jordan is definitely Jordan's
he looked good, dude.
He's one of my favorite players in all of college basketball because
there you go.
I bet that dude's making nothing and he's playing for the love of the game for the most part, right? He was there at the Memphis. I was at the Memphis football game against North Texas. And he was there with the Maui surfboard.
With Andre Turner.
Yeah, looking like
on the field.
It was the best night of his life.
Every time I see him, it looks like he's had the best day of his life.
Meanwhile, you got people out here. And look, I'm not judging Tyreek Smith and his people for, but there is just a difference with Nick Jordan. He's just along
There's no
for
drama,
the ride.
all grind.
He's along for the ride, bro. He wants to have fun. He wants to play basketball. That's how I'm not going to say, I sound like an old person.
He's not going to get off my lawn type
people.
of,
People always have gotten paid.
Always.
It just wasn't as about that as it is today.
Yeah, with the numbers being
again,
above water now and kind of the comparisons.
And again, if you bring value to a place, you should be paid. You should be compensated.
And paid well. Yeah,
right?
100%.
I mean, depending on what your value is, if you don't bring that much value, I'm not going to sit here and say that you should be well paid. Again, that's the downfall for Tyreek. We know your money now.
Yeah. I mean, look, Gary Parrish reported $175,000. I was able to get that confirmed.
I don't know if 8.5 is worth $525. That's a minimum salary in the NBA, bro.
They haven't played a single game that matters, right? They have not played a single regular season game. Yes. And he's already cashed, according to my sources, according to Gary Parrish, $175,000 worth of NIL checks.
And the 525 is accurate according to people you talk to?
In that neighborhood. I'm not sure the exact figure, but I've been told it's in that neighborhood, yes.
That's something. That's a hell of a world we're living in now.
It's a hefty
He's a
hefty
bench player in the AAC.
Well, he came to Memphis competing for a starting power forward role with Nicholas Jourdain. It hasn't shaped out that way, and maybe that still could change. Maybe
that's why
Jourdain, who's seems to be cool with playing whatever role. I don't want to necessarily put that on him. That's what we see from the outside looking in.
Fair,
and if you're Penny, do you just say, hey, let me start Tyreek for the first 5-10 minutes, whatever it may be,
just to keep
to kind of keep everything together, right? Yep. I don't know.
Yep.
But I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Yep.
But you're right, man. Now it's in print, it's on the radio, it's everywhere. People know what he's gotten paid.
That's right.
And I'm sure the players have an idea already.
Yeah, bro. I mean, if anybody on that team is making less than him, we got to go back to the table. We got to go back to the table. How is Tyreek Smith getting more than me?
I mean, he's a valuable player though. He's going to be probably
really,
he's a key rotation piece.
He's a rotation piece.
Key rotation piece. That's the word. That's the word that needs to be highlighted. Right?
Are you his mentor?
I am not his agent. Okay. I am not Book Knight.
It kind of sounds like
but I'm just saying. You look at what he produced
at
SMU
see how
in limited minutes.
We'll find out.
We'll see. And I think now there's pressure on him. Just not to go back to that whole conversation, but now from Tiger Nation, from the fans, like it's like, hey man, like you caused a little bit of a stir there.
No doubt. Got to produce.
You talked about PTSD, man. I can't even tell you how many people I had hit my phone on Monday talking about, hey, what the hell's going on? Like, I just bought my tickets to Maui. We just booked flights, and now this is happening. Should we cancel? Like
for Tyreek Smith?
Hey, man, people were tweaking.
Then no question. if you think about canceling your tickets for Tyreek Smith,
they didn't say cancel. They were disappointed that after 24 hours after booking said trip, there's already ripples of drama, murmurs, whatever you want to call it.
You know what you're getting with Penny, man. I mean, you don't need to. What you gonna act surprised?
Hey, man, it's year 7, and it sounds like he's
exactly.
He's
that's right.
Made growth. You know, I talked to Penny one-on-one, obviously in Dallas a couple weeks ago for AAC Media Day. He talked about being introspective and looking inward this offseason. He cleaned up his staff, according to him.
Yep.
So there are steps being taken, and I think we talked about it earlier, but extinguishing this fire so quickly, right?
Yes.
In less than 48 hours is an example of that, in my opinion. Yep. As far as the product on the court, I guess that remains to be seen, and we'll find out more.
That's right.
When they take on Bama in a few days here.
Yep.
That's all the time we have for Tigers Hoops Talk, but I'm going to pass it off to Frank Bonner, who will fill y'all in on the happenings around the football program ahead of their game against Charlotte on Saturday. Frank, take it away, my guy.
I appreciate it, Parth. Frank Bonner, Tigers football beat writer. John, before we get into the football stuff, John Calipari, never said a word about him. I don't know what that was about. I'm catching strays. Cranberries, never heard of him either.
Yeah. Well, Natalie said you were in here talking about Calipari. That's where I got that from her. So you have to take that up with her. She was saying that you could not stop raving about 4 straight 30-win seasons. What was it? 4 straight Sweet 16s. A Final Four appearance. That's just what she said.
I mean, it sounds like you got the rundown. Sounds like you've been raving about Calipari a little bit.
Look, I know you're hankering for the Indiana basketball program to return to its glory days. I guess we're doing the same in Memphis. I guess we're all just kind of waiting and wishing, aren't we?
Well, speaking of glory days and all that, football, Memphis is 6-1. The offense got better against North Texas.
Yeah.
Defense obviously struggled, but a win is a win. Just how do you evaluate what's going on from week to week? The offense is playing well.
Yep.
Defense struggled, but then the last couple weeks it's flopped. Like how are you evaluating this team 7 games into the season?
Man, and you know it because you're around it every day. I mean, it's kind of a dilemma, because they're finding ways to win games. They're 6-1, which is just objectively, you would say, probably when the season started, that's what you expected they would be through 7. Maybe you had them losing it. And I'm talking about before the season started, before we knew that Florida State had the worst passing attack in all of football. We probably would have said they lose to Florida State, ideally beat everybody else. And so they're 6-1. Unfortunately, your 1 came to the wrong one. And so you're 6-1 with a big asterisk, which is that 1 is a conference loss. And not only was it a conference loss, it was a conference loss to a team that is great in Navy. You almost wish they were terrible, because at least it would give you a clear path to the AAC title game if you run the table, which now even running the table, as you know, guarantees absolutely nothing based on Navy schedule, based on Army schedule, head to head, all of that. So it's very interesting, Frank. To try to quantify what this season is, because if Memphis finishes 11-1, which that's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, there are so many absolute bottom feeders in this conference once you get outside of the top 4 that it's embarrassing. You could beat Tulane. It's one game. It's one 60-minute football game. Anything could happen. They could finish 11-1 and not make the AAC championship game. That is absolutely within the realm of possibility. So how do you? I mean, they're the unluckiest team in college football if that happens.
Yeah, and I said this with Drew on our podcast last week that let's say Memphis does finish 11-1. They miss the the championship game. Heading into the season, everybody was saying, well, you got to at least make it.
Yep.
You probably need to win it.
Yep.
If you don't, folks are going to be looking at the season like a failure and all that. But if you go 11-1 and people are still bagging on this season, essentially what you're saying is that it's an undefeated season or bust.
Yeah.
And Memphis isn't, as a program, in a position to tell a coach that it's an undefeated season or bust.
No, they're not. And it's really not. Again, this is like Memphis is almost cursed in this way because you damn near could have lost to any other team in the conference. You could have lost to anybody in the conference. Like if I'm telling you, all right, you could take a conference loss, right? You're going to have a conference loss. Dude, you could have lost to anybody. I mean, maybe other than Tulane, right? And still been in a position, to make it. It's not necessarily that you have to go undefeated. It's that you have to not lose the wrong games, And you don't necessarily know what those wrong games are going to be.
Yeah, because you definitely didn't know. You didn't think Navy was.
No, you were 9.5-point favorite. They were picked, 11th, 12th, last? I mean, I don't remember. I mean, it was
No, they were 11. They were
11 out of 13?
Mm-hmm.
So,
14.
Okay, yeah. So, bottom quadrant, But that's the way it's turned out. And so I think it makes it, 11-1 is a great season. However, we're stipulating that they're beating Tulane, which is no guarantee. More likely, I think it's 10-2. You lose at Tulane. You beat everybody else. You lose at Tulane because you'll be an underdog at Tulane. How does that one feel? That one feels a little different.
Well, that one creates more area for critique, right? Because
who did you beat?
Yeah, because USF isn't what you thought it was going to be. Right?
I mean, USF was a pathetic backup quarterback. North Texas is feisty, but obviously their defense is one of the worst in America. UTSA is the wheels have completely fallen off. So Charlotte's a joke. So what can you really? You didn't get out. You didn't get Army on your schedule. We're stipulating a loss to Tulane. So it just kind of what it does is it sort of supports this. And again, we're looking way out, right? I mean, Memphis is an 18.5-point favorite against Charlotte. I don't think we're telling any secrets here.
And then you got UTSA after that.
Yeah, we don't need to sit here and preview Charlotte. This is a bigger picture ordeal. But what it does do is it sort of supports this argument that is forming that Silverfield can't win big conference games because he hasn't. He hasn't won a big conference game since before you got here. And that was UCF by a point when it was 50-49.
But I will say, looking at the schedule, that Thanksgiving game against Tulane is shaping up to where that can be his chance. The last game of the season, presumably with everything on the line in terms of – because it's not out of the world to think that Tulane can beat Navy.
Right.
And then assuming that Navy loses to Notre Dame, you're in this three-way tie with Navy and Tulane. It goes to the conference playoff rankings.
That's right.
Notre Dame would have 2 overall losses. Memphis will have beaten Tulane, so Memphis will be the top team in that rankings to win over those two. Yeah, assuming that they win out.
You would think so.
So heading into that game, the expectation is that there is a situation where everything will be on the table.
Is it possible for Navy to lose to Notre Dame, then Tulane to beat Navy, Memphis beat everybody else, beat Tulane, and Memphis still be behind Tulane in the college football playoff rankings? Is that possible? Because Memphis will be lagging behind. I mean, is it as simple as you're gonna because
look at the losses, right? Tulane would have 3 losses.
That's true.
Because they lost to Oklahoma, and I think it was TCU.
It was who was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think
it was Oklahoma and somebody else.
Yeah.
Kansas State.
Kansas State. Yeah. Kansas State, right? So a 3-loss Tulane team is not going to be ahead
of a one-loss
Memphis team that
beat them. That's true. Yeah. That would be ridiculous.
Honestly, I think it's more likely that the college football playoff would put Navy over Memphis than Tulane because you could argue
one loss and they beat you. Well, that'd be 2 losses.
Well, it would be 2 losses, but you could argue that their loss to Notre Dame is a push.
But 2 versus 1. I guess this is
it would still be Memphis.
But aren't they trying to eliminate what happened to Florida State last year? Aren't they trying to?
Yeah, I don't think there's a scenario where that tie happens and Memphis is not ranked ahead of.
I mean, that's not unheard of. I mean, it's just like you just need so many things to happen. You need so many things to break right. And, it'd be nice if North Texas beat Army too. I mean, that would help. I mean, because you would love to introduce another scenario into the mix.
Because I'm also not 100% sure that Notre Dame isn't going to lay an egg like they did against NIU and all of a sudden Navy beats Notre Dame or maybe Army beats Notre Dame or whatever. Notre Dame's got to play both of them.
That's a big problem.
So Notre Dame isn't, it's not unusual for them to lose a game they shouldn't lose.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, I mean, you got that. But I want to break down the offense a little bit, right? Because the offense has been a conversation in terms of production. To me, it looks like they turned a corner. But even in that game against North Texas, right, they had 5 straight drives of punts or whatever. But I think the important piece is that when it happened against USF, where they scored 2 touchdowns in the first 3 drives and then went cold, they never got it back.
That's right.
Against North Texas, they went cold and then they got it back. And I think if you look at that game, one thing you can say is that the offense competed.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily have to compete against a USF or a Middle Tennessee or any of the other wins they had. Even against Navy, they lost that game, but they scored 44 points. They competed. The defense just didn't come through like it had been. So when the offense has had their backs against the wall this season in those 2 games, they have performed.
Yep.
And so I don't know if that's just I don't want to necessarily say a playing down to the opponent or whatever. I know Seth kind of talked about when you're in the fourth quarter and you have a two-score lead, you're not necessarily trying to take shots, and I get all that. But if we're looking big picture against Tulane, that's going to be another game where the offense is going to have to compete. Did you see enough out of this North Texas game where you believe they'll be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to the point that Seth's trying to make, I mean, the 5 straight punts didn't happen in the fourth quarter. The 5 straight punts were happening in the second and third when the game was sort of up in the,
he made that comment about the other games, like against Florida, USF and stuff. Well, he didn't make that about North Texas.
Same difference, though. I mean, that game should have been 1,000,000-3, right? I mean, that as USF has completely quit on the season with a backup quarterback. So what I can't understand about the Memphis offense is that clearly there is a switch. Clearly, when they need to do it, they can do anything. Mario Anderson can get in the end zone. They can go downfield. They can move the chains at will. But it's like they don't do it until they have to do it, whether they're like you said, in the fourth quarter or if they're chasing. Didn't North Texas take the lead? Yeah. So North Texas takes the lead and they're like, we got to pick this up. Why is it taking that? Because the great offenses don't wait around for the game state to dictate, right? They say, okay, we're gonna go out and we're gonna be aggressive. We're gonna take the matters into our own hands. And it just kind of feels like the offense waits for the game to come to them a lot of times this year. And it's like you don't have to do that. I'm gonna put that more on the coaching, on the play calling than anything else. But when that offense plays with tempo, when they play with purpose, they have shown they are as good as the preseason said they would be. Right?
Yeah,
they're a top 10 offense, but it almost takes somebody lighting a fire under their ass to get them to do it. And I think that's what frustrates me about that offense is that, man, when it's on, it looks great, but it's not always on.
And Cramsey said the same. Like we talked to him this week, he said he felt like in that game they did a really good job in the answer drives.
Yes.
In terms of answering.
They answered every time. It was incredibly impressive.
But he said they didn't do a good job when they had a chance to extend the lead or basically put their foot on the throat or whatever. And so that's where you're trying to get this offense to.
No question.
And
because that's what cost them in Navy, right? They did a great job with the answer drives. They were down 19 with 8 minutes left in the game. They're driving with a chance to win the damn thing before Seth throws the pick. But there were so many empty drives after that opening drive where they scored that touchdown with Brandon Thompson on that long run. So many empty drives past that you're just wondering what's happening in the middle of these games where you guys are just letting off. Where is the I don't want to say killer instinct, but where is just that drive, throughout the middle of the game where you can build a lead and pad a lead and not be in a situation where you have to press in the fourth quarter, because eventually that magic will run out.
But, I mean, Memphis has been, since I've been on the beat, whether it's a win or a loss, the games seem to always be close. Whether they should or shouldn't be, that's just that's just the nature of this program. I don't know if it was like that when Norvell was running. I know obviously the high scoring, but in terms of the closeness, Memphis is going to play close games, whether it's a win or a loss.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the defense is just not elite enough, to create a ton of separation.
It wasn't supposed to be though.
No,
coming into this year, it was just
no.
like the defense. Even North Texas scoring,
right.
I think the defense has answered the bell that it was supposed to be.
Agreed.
I think what happened is when you saw how good they were in the beginning of the year, the standards started to increase, and now people are wondering what's made of the defense. I think the defense, even with the North Texas game, is significantly improved from last year to the point where you can actually count on them to get a stop late in the game like they did against North Texas, like they did against Florida State.
Yeah.
I think the defense is doing its part.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's again, this was always going to be a team, as you know, that was predicated on offense and winning games through Seth. And so the bar was not like, oh, go out and be, a patented Nick Saban defense. That's not what you have to be. You just have to be able to be better than last year's defense, which was at the bottom of America. And so they are definitely not that, right? They are definitely not that. And I think that's, I don't think anybody should have been fooled by, North Alabama, disaster. Troy, disaster. Florida State, disaster. I mean, you look back at those teams that they looked good against defensively, all of those teams are terrible. And the two times that they've seen a real quarterback, they've been absolutely thrashed. And I would expect that to remain the case, right? Like, they'll look great this weekend against Charlotte. They'll look great against UTSA probably. And then when they play Tulane, they'll probably give up 450 yards to Mensa. But that's fine because you have a top 10 offense. And that's what everybody kind of signed up for this year. Yeah,
and then you've got a guy like Chandler Martin who, he's trying to make a case to be considered for All-American consideration. So when you've got a guy like that, you never know when a play can be made, whether it's a forced fumble recovery for a touchdown or whatever. And so when you have that in a close game, I do feel like you can start trusting the defense, no matter what has happened through the course of a game. In a close game, you can trust the defense in a way that I haven't seen since I've been on the beat.
Yeah, no, I think that, that's the difference between this year and last year is that, we were just talking about against good quarterbacks, they might get exposed a little bit, but they were getting exposed against anybody and everybody last year.
Yeah, right.
Like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter
dink
who it
and
was.
dump that they were doing.
Yeah.
Like, the offenses, especially when they had a lead. I think that's the biggest difference with this defense is when Memphis is playing with the lead, Hankins, the defensive coordinator, isn't getting in this preventative play calling that we've seen before.
Right.
Like, he's still bringing pressure. He's still and so that's the major difference because you'll sit here and Memphis will have a 2-touchdown lead and they're so focused on not giving up a 20-yard catch that they'll give up 3 7-yard catches, which is the same thing. And you don't see that from this defense, which I think is huge.
No, it's better. And it's all it ever had to be, So the key is just making sure, and it's a lot of pressure on the offense, but that's what happens. I mean, you bring back literally every relevant piece from that offense. You're supposed to be among the best in America, and so they need to be prepared to win games that way.
Now, a couple of podcasts ago, this was shortly after the Navy loss, and we were talking about how you felt about their chances to win the conference. And it was basically it was on life support. Mm-hmm. How do you feel now that, Navy still hasn't lost.
Right.
But
we're still waiting on it.
Yeah, but the conversation was we didn't know, especially North Texas's offense, we didn't know if the offense was going to be able to kick it in gear, and it looks like they may be able to.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty similar. Army hasn't lost, Navy hasn't lost, Tulane hasn't lost. So, in the conference, of course. And so, I think that's my pessimism is pretty much the same. It's unfortunate for Memphis that it feels like they are on the outside looking in with one conference loss. But there is still so much that has to play out. Army does have to play North Texas. Navy does have to play Tulane. There are a couple of live spots for an L. But, man, I just go back to the how pitiful this league is. There's nobody in this conference, once you get past the top 4, that you can look at and say, oh, that's a live underdog. They got a chance to pull. All of these teams are terrible. Like, not just not good. I mean, I know North Texas might be the only team that you would kind of put in that middle, right? But everybody else, the drop off from 4 to 5 and then 5 to everybody else is absolutely massive. I would bet it's like the largest in America.
Yes.
The middle to the bottom. It's like 3 states.
It's definitely a top heavy.
Who's the 6th best team in the American? Not that I think, but I mean, you can look, 6th best team in the SEC, 6th best team in the Mountain West, 6th best, like a Utah State in the Mountain West, kind of live-ish. Who's the Utah State of the American? Like, are you trying to tell me it's Temple? Oh,
well, it wouldn't. I mean, honestly, it would be Charlotte before it was Temple.
Yeah, but Charlotte's a complete dumpster
Yeah.
fire.
Which is why, I mean, we haven't even talked about playoff consideration because but in terms of how conferences are being compared,
That's
right? Like,
it's probably supposed to be UTSA, but
it was supposed to be.
Their
Like,
quarterback situation has just been bad, and they were, they look like they've kind of quit on the year.
Yeah, and
everybody's quitting. That's the problem. Charlotte's quitting. USF's quitting. UTSA is quitting. USF would have been a good candidate, but Byron Brown's not coming back.
no, and that situation, that ship has sailed. And so now you have to win. And in terms of the way it's going to be perceived for Memphis fans, you're looking at a conference where the middle to the bottom is essentially crap.
Exactly.
Memphis fans want to see Memphis at least play in the game, the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, we can have that discussion,
Yeah.
But that would be a devastating development if they really, truly finish 11-1 and don't get in.
But in terms of, this is the part of the year where folks are going to be talking about tiebreakers and all that.
Right.
I'm going to have something on that in a couple of days or whatever. You and I are going to have our Tigers Talk where we're going to continue to talk about this. Anybody still looking to see what's out there in the Daily Memphian, check Parth out. I know you and Parth talked a lot about men's basketball. You've got your column out there about Tyreek Smith. If you haven't read it, go check it out. But this will be a wrap for another Great Tigers podcast. Appreciate y'all for listening, and don't forget to check out thedailymemphian.com.